In this video, I started a brand new hardcore world and transformed this area into the perfect survival setup, including a cozy starter home, a fully equipped storage house, along with a few other buildings and details. I began my journey by spawning in a coastal plains biome, probably one of the better spawns you can get, and of course headed to the first tree I could find. Once chopped down, I made a crafting table and crafted my first wooden pickaxe. With this, I gathered some wool from a few nearby volunteers to help make a bed for skipping the night later. I then headed underground to grab some stone, which we can use to craft some new tools. Just around the corner I found some of the new firefly bushes, which I of course had to collect for decorating the base later. I also found some sugarcane, which I gathered up as well. Now, just over this hill, I was lucky enough to spot a shipwreck in the distance, so I crafted a boat to head over and take a look. I had a quick search around until I found the first chest, which was full of carrots and potatoes. After catching my breath, I went down a second time to find the next chest. I was excited to find this one was full of iron and emeralds, perfect for starting me off on day one. I headed back to shore and used the iron I just found to craft a pickaxe, as well as a bucket to collect some water. I found some more sheep just up ahead, which I took care of, and this now gives us enough wool to craft that all important bed for later. I then realised that I hadn't actually made a sword yet, so I crafted one and tested it out on this nearby cow. As I rode along this river, I saw some coal in the hillside, so I made sure to collect all of it. With the essentials now in hand, it was time we headed off to find a perfect location for building. After some more population control and chopping a few more trees, the sun was already starting to set, so I laid down the bed and skipped through the first night. When the sun rose, I picked up my bed and headed off to continue exploring. I noticed some horses in the distance, and I quickly remembered you can now craft saddles in the latest version, so I did exactly that and headed over to tame one. It wasn't long until I came across a village, so obviously I raided it for all of its hay bales and crops, and any other valuables I could find. Once satisfied, I headed back to the horse and continued the search for the base location. After a few more minutes of exploring, I stumbled across a lake nestled deep inside this forest, and I knew straight away that this was the perfect spot for building. With the sun setting once more, I placed down the bed and made a temporary hole for the horse to stay in, so he doesn't try and run away. And that brings us to the end of day 2. When the sun rose, I placed a chest to clear out my mess of an inventory, and then began to smelt some of the meat we collected earlier. I headed over to the lake to plant some of our sugarcane. I'll be needing this for a full level 30 enchanting setup we make later on. We'll also need some leather for the books, so I crafted a hoe to plant some wheat which we can use to breed some cows. After chopping down a few more trees and crafting up some torches, it's time we go on our first mining expedition. I found this underwater cave in our lake. Now this is actually perfect as these are much safer than regular caves as mobs can't spawn here. Using the simple door trick to create an air pocket makes exploring these super safe and easy. I spent some time gathering a range of resources, mainly iron and coal for now. I smelted what we've found so far and was able to make our first pieces of armor. I'm feeling much safer already. Heading deeper into the cave, I came across some lapis, gold, and a bit more iron, but unfortunately no diamonds just yet. I guess they'll have to wait for another day. I smelted up some more iron and was able to complete my full set of armor. With the rest of the iron, I upgraded my old stone tools and also made a shield. Now fully geared up, I swam back up to the surface, and of course it was night time. I hurried to the bed to sleep, but was rudely awakened by some mobs. I quickly took care of the situation and headed to the bed to skip the night. Upon waking up, I wanted to clear out an area for building later, so I got to it and chopped down a bunch of trees, giving us much more space. With all this new wood I collected, I crafted up some fences and some fence gates to make a cow pen. I picked this spot just over to the side, so it doesn't get in the way of any of the future builds I have planned. But of course it's no cow pen without the cows, so we had to go and persuade a few of the locals. We've also managed to round up an intruder, but I guess he can stay for now. I used the wheat that we stole from the village earlier to make to expand our population. It was now time for some more exploration, specifically to find some spruce and dark oak trees. So I placed down the boat and set sail. But before I got very far, I noticed another shipwreck nearby, so of course we had to go and take a look. I actually managed to find a buried treasure map in one of these chests, so obviously I headed over in that direction. After a lot of digging sand later, I finally found the chest, and within that we found our first diamond. I headed back to unload my inventory as it was already full, before then heading back out and resuming the mission for the saplings. After quite a long boat ride, I finally came across a dark forest, so I stopped to chop down some of the trees, ensuring I got at least 4 saplings so I can grow it back at home. With over 4 saplings acquired, we are now ready to set off. Just as I was about to leave, I actually spotted one of the new pale oak biomes in the distance, so of course we had to go up there and grab one of those saplings too. With the sapling now in hand, I headed back to the river and continued our journey to find a spruce forest. After a few more minutes of rowing, I found exactly what we were looking for, so I chopped down a few of the trees until we had enough saplings. I also found some sweet berry bushes which will be perfect for decorating the base. With these in hand, we can now finally head back home. Once back, I cleared out an area of trees to make space for planting some 2x2 spruce saplings. I then headed down to the lake to harvest some of our sugarcane as well as some of the wheat, and I then used this to further increase our cow population. Now it's about time that we started work on building the base, but just before we get to any of the building, we of course need to do some terraforming. With a lot of digging and a few shovels later, this area is already looking much better. However, we are now almost completely dry of iron and coal, so it's time that we went for a quick mining session to gather resources for base building. As I got deeper, I also managed to find my first diamonds, always a great feeling. Whilst I was down here, I crafted a diamond pick and collected some obsidian for an enchanting table and a nether portal later on. With a now full inventory of resources, it was time to head back to the base and unload. We now of course have enough diamonds for an enchanting table, so I made one and put level 1 enchants on all of my gear, because right now we don't have a full setup. After a small amount more terraforming and relocating my chests, it was finally time to plan the layout for my base. So I crafted a few different coloured concrete and laid out the first building, which is going to be the starter house. Just next door to that we will have a storage house, and then I thought this spot down on the lake was a perfect spot to have some kind of fishing hut. We'll then of course need some paths between them all, so the yellow concrete is showing where I plan to put those. I've also added a spot up here for a nether portal, and one more down below which will be a mine entrance. And with that the layout is complete. Now after chopping down a bunch of spruce wood and going through a few more axes, it was finally time to build the starter house. I usually start with the beams when building, and this house was no exception. I wanted a stone base to break up from the wood, using tough cobblestone and andesite to texture. Now it's no fun having flat walls, so I always try to add some kind of detail or pop out section to create some depth. And it's a good idea to outline the roof with a separate colour. I feel it just adds that extra layer of interest to the build and makes that centre colour stand out more. After that, I added a raised roof section to the front, as well as some berries and leaves to detail. The final thing was to add this chimney to the side, once again getting rid of the flat wall and also adding a sign of life to the build. And that completes our starter house. It's time we moved inside now to add an interior to the house, and the first thing I did was add a staircase so we have access to the upper floor. We'll get back up here later. After that, I added some stairs to the front door, and then built a wall to separate the room into two. I find it much easier to design interiors this way. I then dug up all of the grass and added a flooring. And a simple trick here is to use slabs for your floor. It takes up half as many resources. The first room will be a small kitchen / dining room. I used some polished andesite in the floor to separate the two. Now this doesn't really serve much survival purpose, it's mainly just for the aesthetics. However, this could have been a good space for a storage room if I didn't have a storage house planned next door. For this next room, I started by adding a railing to the front stairs and then another to the main staircase. I also added access to a basement down below should we wish to expand down here in the future. Next up, I crafted some maps and started to explore the local area in order to make a map wall back at the house, something I always do in my worlds. Whilst exploring, I found this spot with a great view of the base. It's already coming together nicely. I headed back and placed the maps in some glowing item frames. This would be really cool to see our progress as we build more over time. Now we can head upstairs and start by firstly placing some beds, and I added colour with a composter and some leaves. And right now the staircase is a bit of a hazard, so we need to add a banister to prevent any unwanted casualties. I then added a partition wall in the middle to split the room into two. Once again, it's much easier to design interiors when you have smaller spaces. I used trapdoors and stairs to create a cool arched doorway between the two rooms. Now I didn't really know what to add in this space, so I just added dark oak to make a kind of table and repeated this for the other room too. Over here I placed a crafting table and replaced these planks for some stairs to give it some more depth. And we had a plain wall here, and the easiest fix to these is to add a painting. I also found another empty spot downstairs, so I added one here too. Heading back upstairs, this is going to be the enchanting room. But before this, we need to craft up a bunch of books for the bookshelves. We'll be needing 15 in total to get the level 30 enchants. I picked up the enchanting table, and whilst here, I also crafted an anvil and a grindstone to complete the ultimate enchanting setup. With these in hand, we can head back inside and place in everything we need. Next up, our ceiling right now is looking kinda rough, so to fix it I added a spruce log beam in the centre for some more detail. I repeated the same for the other room and then hung chains with lanterns to replace the temporary torches we had. From here I placed ups and down stairs to smooth out the roof from the underside. The last addition to the enchanting room is to add some barrels, because we of course need some storage close by when enchanting. One more detail I'd like to add is a lectern and book and quill, but for that we need some ink, which we don't currently have, so let's go grab some. I headed to the nearest river I could find and took out a bunch of squid there. And on the way back I actually managed to find a wolf, and with one bone to spare we managed to tame him. So I took him back to the base and gave him a blue collar, and then sat him down outside of our house. With the lectern and book now crafted, I headed upstairs to place them down. I finished the room with some plant pots to add a nice pop of colour. And that completes our enchanting room. I headed through and added some carpet to the end of the bed, and that completes the full interior. With the enchanting setup complete, we can now finally enchant our first item, which of course had to be a pickaxe. I got quite lucky with efficiency 4 and unbreaking 3. I mean, it would have been quite nice to get fortune as well, but this one's perfectly fine for now. Putting our new pickaxe to good use, it's time we started work on the mine entrance. I cleared some of this dirt back to create a flat wall to build on, and then began to lay down some blocks. I've gone for a spruce wood design here, mainly because we have an abundance of it, but also because it's my favourite wood type, if you couldn't guess already. I've also made sure to add a gate so we get no surprises later on. After that I started work on the path. I placed some dirt to kind of give it some shape of how I want the staircase to flow. I then went in with some cobblestone and andesite slabs to make a gradual incline up the hill. To add some contrast from the stone, I placed down some spruce fences along the sides. This also gave us somewhere to add lanterns to light up the area. I finished with some path and coarse dirt, and that completes our staircase. For the inside of the mine, I wanted to make a mini version of a lush cave, but for that we actually need to go out and find one. So I headed back out on the boat and rode around in hopes to find an azalea tree. It didn't actually take too long to find one, so I got out and dug straight down to find the cave. I made sure to mine down with 2 blocks, this way I wouldn't fall into anything unexpected. After a while of digging, I finally ran into the cave and set out to collect a bunch of different blocks to make my own version back at home. I also managed to find a bunch more diamonds in this trip, ending up with a further 32 to add to our collection. With everything now gathered, it was time we headed back up to the surface. I popped out in a jungle biome and found some cocoa beans, so I collected these before then heading on back home. Now having a total of 51 diamonds, it was time we crafted some new diamond tools and armour. We'll enchant these gradually over time. From here I wanted to move my chest somewhere safe, so I cleared out this space in the bedroom for a quick storage setup. I had to make a small adjustment to the roof so we could open the top chests, but now it's much better having our storage inside. Having 30 levels again, I decided to enchant my diamond axe next. I was excited to see efficiency 4, but that was unfortunately where the fun ended. At least we can chop those trees faster now. With everything now in hand, it was time to get to work on our own little lush cave. I started out by mining a rough shape in the hillside, trying to replicate the size of a natural cave. With a rough shape, I smoothed out the edges with some slabs and replaced any dirt on the walls with stone, ensuring to use a nice range of block types to add some texture. Now I want to add an elevator, running from up here all the way down to level minus 56, and the easiest solution to this is to use bubble columns. But without soul sand just yet, this will have to wait until later in the video. I added some barrels because storage is always nice to have close by, and I integrated it nicely with slabs and stairs. With the shape and texturing now complete, we can now add some life to the mine. The last thing to do was to make the mine stand out more, and right now the spruce wood kind of blends into the dirt, so I wanted to change it out for some stone, again using a range of blocks for texture. And that completes our mine entrance. I really love how this one turned out. Before the next project, I was rudely disturbed by some bad guys, so I had to quickly show them who's boss. With that dealt with, it's time we started work on our storage house, because our current chests are quickly becoming full, so let's collect everything we need to make the build. This one again is going to be quite spruce heavy, just because it's the easiest wood type to gather. I also made use of some of the bamboo I planted earlier to craft up some of the chests. We will however be needing a lot more than this. I grabbed a bunch more that we'd collected already to make this into chests too. However, we still didn't have enough wood, so that meant another trip out to the spruce trees. Once I'd replanted the saplings, I headed back to craft even more chests as well as everything else we'll need, and after some time crafting and collecting the remaining resources, we finally had all we need to start the storage house. So to begin building, I once again started with the wooden beams, using barrels at the base for some added detail. I then added the walls using a stone texture with some spruce fences as windows. And from here I went in with stairs, trapdoors and fences to add detail to each section. With that done, I moved on to the roof, starting with a deep slate texture for the outline. I filled the gap with diorite and calcite to contrast nicely from the deep slate. With the outline in place, I kept it simple and filled the centre with spruce slabs. But I thought it looked a little too plain, so I placed some more slabs and trapdoors to add some depth. The sides were also lacking in colour, so I fixed that with leaves and hay bales. With the outside now complete, it was time we worked on the inside, starting with stripped spruce logs. I made sections to help with organising our chests later, and used stairs and trapdoors to build arches in between. It was then time to replace this grass and add in a flooring, and I've gone for an oak plank and strip log design to help break up from the spruce we've already used. Now that the floor is down, we can start to place the chests. And with 150 chests in total, we'll have enough space to store over 250,000 items. I left out one section and I thought this would be a nice place to add some furnaces, although this could be used to expand the storage if we need it down the line. I then placed a crafting table in each of the sections, so there's always one at our fingertips if we need it. I finished off with a stone cutter and some smaller aesthetic details. And with that, our storage house is complete. I just need to move everything in now. I now noticed I was close to level 30 again, so I bred some cows to gain some XP, and once I was there, it was time to enchant my next tool, this time being a shovel. I clicked enchant, but was very happy to see Unbreaking 3 as well as Efficiency 4. I quickly put the new shovel to work, and added a path connecting all of our builds together. From here, we had a lot of empty areas around our builds, so I used some bone meal as an easy way to fill them in. I also made sure to use those firefly bushes that we collected all the way back on day 1. These will add a really cool effect at night. Now, I left this space at the front for a reason, and that's because I want to add a large wheat farm up here. Now, this won't be the most efficient layout for a farm, but it's mainly to add a nice aesthetic and a bit more colour up here. For the next task, I'm going to work on the fisherman hut. So I placed down a chest and set out to collect the resources we needed. Now this one's a much smaller build than the others, so it didn't take long to gather everything together. Beginning the building now, and again I've gone for barrels on the base for that added touch of detail. I shortly decided that I wanted to shift it over slightly, to be closer to the path. I also made sure to include a small dock area on the front, for somewhere to relax and to fish from. I added a roof outline using spruce slabs, and filled the centre with oak. And for the cozy vibes, I added a small chimney on the top. This also helps to add some life. With the building in place, we can now add a simple interior. I placed a seat outside to sit down and fish from, and finished with some item frames for that last touch of detail. And that completes our fishing hut. The following night, I set out on a hunt, in an effort to reach level 30 once more. Once I got there, it was time to enchant our next item, which I chose to be a chest plate. It seems our luck may have returned as I managed to get the perfect enchant. This will be great protection for the nether later. Now, to accompany our fishing hut, I thought a boat dock would also look great on our lake. I've gone for a simple design using campfires and spruce slabs. I've used a cool trick with dark oak logs for underwater to give it that weathered look. I then added a few bridges to section the boats, and of course we need some lighting for those nighttime rides. All that was left to do was place in some boats, and that completes our dock. One of the last builds we need to add to our base is a nether portal, and we had this area planned out from earlier. After spending some time crafting and collecting all the necessary resources, we were ready to get to building. I started with a 3x3 portal frame and then built a design around it. I kept it on the theme of spruce once again, and completed it with a deep slate roof for contrast. With the portal built, we needed to do some terraforming around it. I made sure to use bone meal and plant some trees on the grass above to help blend it in with the surroundings. And that completes our portal. Now, just before heading in, I wanted to gear up a little to make it a bit safer, so I headed up to grab my diamond armor, and although not enchanted yet, this will still be better than my current iron armor. I also wanted to enchant my sword, so with another 30 levels, I did exactly that. I ended up with sharp 3 and unbreaking 3. Not the best, but definitely not the worst. So it was finally time we headed into the nether, with the main goal of finding soul sand for our mine elevator. After a brief look around, I quickly remembered I'd forgotten a piece of golden armor for those piglins, so I hurried back to the base to craft some, before heading straight back in. Now back in the nether, the hunt for soul sand can continue. On my travels, I made sure to collect other useful resources like shroom blocks, quartz and glowstone. After what felt like a while, I finally ran into some soul sand, so I collected around a stack and headed back to the base, not wanting to risk it anymore. Upon returning, it seems the piglin wanted to explore the overworld, one of the main reasons that I added a gate here. After sorting out my inventory, I headed out to collect the things we needed for our elevator. I started by heading to the sea to grab some kelp, and then collected around 2 stacks of sand from the nearby beach. Upon heading back, we were once again at level 30, and after seeing a pickaxe would guarantee fortune 3, it was a no-brainer to go for it. I also managed to get efficiency 4, so I combined both of mine together to make the perfect pickaxe. We now have everything we need to make our mine elevator. I started by placing some water at the top. This will be needed for later. I then began to dig a tunnel downwards. I took it slowly as this was very risky. I made sure to keep my water bucket close by just in case. I continued mining down to the desired Y level of -54 and dug out a small room once down here. I marked the location of the other shaft and added a few blocks to make it look nice. With the decor added, it was time we dug up the second shaft, and I built up with sand so it was easy to remove afterwards. Once at the top, I placed some water and rode it all the way down back to the bottom. I made a quick water drop here with a sign to prevent any fall damage, and then used the torch trick to easily remove the sand we placed. I replaced the bottom block with soul sand, and then waited for the water to come flowing down. Now to make the elevator work, I had to place kelp and bone meal this all the way until it reached the surface. Upon breaking the kelp, we now have full water source blocks, and our bubble elevator is finished. Now this part is always scary, but I had to test out the water drop as well. Thankfully it worked perfectly. Now to wrap up the base, all that was left was adding a bench to sit back and take in everything we've built. I really like how this has come together, and if you'd like to explore this world for yourself, you can sign up on my Patreon to download both Survival World and the schematics for all builds. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.